Welcome everyone to StudyTravel TV Live. I'm Nicola Hancox, editor of StudyTravel magazine, and I'd like to introduce you to a live news programme where we'll share news, statistics, and invite industry people to discuss topical items.
Hello everyone, I'm Matthew Knott, news editor of StudyTravel magazine. For the best viewing experience, please put the call in side-by-side speaker view. You'll see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
In today's broadcast, we'll start with a news story. We will then play a clip of a special pre-recorded interview with Brett Blacker, the CEO of English Australia. And then we will be joined by our guest this week, Gabriela Ardito, CEO of VCE International and President of the Argentine Study Abroad Association, and Diego Sanchez, Manager of International Promotion and Marketing at Languages Canada. We'll then introduce a few more stories as we go through the show. If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on the stories, please post them in the chat box below and we will read them out at the end. I'll just take this opportunity to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Londonist.
Indeed. Okay, so let's have a look at our main story this week. And we start today in Australia, where language school peak body English Australia has released its national ELICOS market report for 2020, showing a 47% decrease in both international student numbers and student weeks delivered compared with the previous year.
In total, 90,130 students were registered with ELICOS English language centres, which included around 4,500 online offshore students. The estimated value of the sector decreased by 53.2% to around $1.1 billion, English Australia said.
China remained the top source market despite a 48% decrease, and Colombia became the second largest source country with only a 25% decrease. Japan, Brazil, and Korea completed the top 5, and agents accounted for 82% of the students enrolled in 2020.
So at this point, we're going to have a look at a video interview with Brett Blacker, the CEO of English Australia, who discussed the data with Scott Wade, producer of StudyTravel.
Hello. This is Scott Wade, StudyTravel TV producer, and today I'm talking to Brett Blacker, CEO of English Australia, the Language School Association with 126 members. And we're going to be chatting about the EA stats for 2020 that were made public last week. G'day, Brett. How's it going, mate?
Hi, Scott. Doing well, thanks. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So as far as the EA 2020 stats go, we have to see them as a good result, mate, as the numbers only dropped 47%, which is a lot less than the 75 to 80% we're hearing from Ireland and Malta and the likes of the UK and the USA. Now, given Australia's pretty much totally locked out international arrivals, even Australians trying to get home, how have you managed that?
Yeah, Scott, good point. We, the first few months of 2020 were still actually tracking relatively well. And there's probably two key points. The student visa data, which is mostly reported in terms of our overall stats and the bulk of our student numbers in that last 2020 cohort, 74% of the students were here on student visas. But it's a mixed performance between colleges that teach those students on student visas and those that would have been on visitor or working holidays, which actually had more of the 60 to 70% market decline. But what we saw was trends. So the overall market, as you mentioned, down 47%. But if you actually look even on the student visa proportion, in October last year, the decline was almost 60%. In November, it was 63%. And in December, it was 76%. So it sort of tailed off very hard from where we were at the start to the back half of the year.
Right, and there was a fair few online students in that cohort as well, weren't there?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. In 2020, English Australia was supported by Department of Education Skills Employment here in Australia to do a new research piece each quarter, which looked at the volume of students that were either studying on student visa, non-student visa, but also if they were online offshore. And it's the first time we'd captured that data set. And the trends were really quite remarkable from the first quarter, which is obviously only when the hard border closures first started, where there was just 1% of the total cohort studying online or offshore. Track that through to Q4, and in that period from October, November, December, half the reported students in that survey were studying online, and with a strong proportion of those that were actually offshore. So yeah, in terms of innovation and the ability for student providers to pick up students in an online offshore market, quite a remarkable achievement, really.
Yeah, it was a great result, mate. Now, in the stats, there's an obvious dichotomy in the markets, those that decreased 50% and more, and those that decreased between 13 and 25%, such as Nepal and Colombia. And how did they manage to keep their numbers so high?
Yeah, with the border closures, I mentioned the students that had arrived in Australia pre the formal closure on the 19th of March in 2020. And those cohort students in particular, Colombia, Nepal, were two that we'd had high numbers of students actually arrive. And many of the students that were here onshore continued to study throughout the year over that period and progressed their English language throughout the year. So we didn't see as dramatic market decline because they weren't necessarily able to travel into Australia. It was a little bit more stable, mainly because of them actually being in Australia before the borders had formally closed.
So when they re-enroll in an English program, then, if that's what they did, are they counted as a new student that, rather than the same student who is doing more weeks?
It depends on the way in which the data is counted. So Department of Education in their student visa statistics will only count them as a commencement once and an enrolment during that period of time. For us here, we'd actually seen growth. So our survey data counts the student as just one person. So they'll only ever be counted once in that data set. The student weeks obviously will increase with them being onshore. But we'd seen growth out of particularly Colombia in terms of its market share out of 2019 into 2020. With it becoming our number 2 top source destination, even in our student visa cohort. And in Brazil at that stage was number 3. So at the end of 2019, December 2019 into December 2020, we'd actually had almost equivalent numbers, almost market share equivalent out of Colombia and Brazil as we'd had out of China at the end of 2019. So we were on very much on a growth trajectory out of Latin America pre the border closures, and that's what shielded a bit.
Okay, and if you would like to watch the full interview with Brett, you can find that on our latest news page and on the StudyTravel TV live page on the StudyTravel network. So at this point, let's bring in our guests, Gabby and Diego. There's Gabby, there's Diego. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining us.
Hi,
thanks for the
Matthew.
invitation.
Hi,
Okay.
Nicola.
Hi guys. Thank you for being here. Okay, we'll jump straight into it. Diego, we've seen the shorter term ELT destinations such as the UK report losses of around 80% and a bit less for a longer stay market, Australia here. Canada is perhaps between those two in terms of average stay. So what can we expect from your 2020 data?
Indeed, that's true. So we should be releasing our 2020 annual survey pretty soon. So in the month of July, if not early August. And I'm happy to share a spoiler here. We know that the drop was in 56%. I'm talking about student numbers. So in 2019, we had 150,000 students. Last year, we had about 65,000 students. So as you say, we're sort of in between. But in terms of student weeks, obviously, because those that came here, they were studying for longer, right? So we had only 50% decrease in number of study weeks, which makes sense. And we still had the top 5 countries as China, Brazil, Japan, Korea, and Mexico. And just as in the case of Australia, Colombians were actually one of the nationalities that had the least drop in student numbers. So we still had a lot of Colombians coming with only a drop of 23%.
Okay, well, love the fact we have an exclusive there. Thank you for that, Diego. Gabby, as we've just mentioned there, the Latin American markets fared better for Australia and seemingly for Canada as well. And we reported a few weeks back, actually, that Argentina was one of the more stable markets for the USA in their IEP data. So did a lot of students travel at the beginning of the year before the lockdown? And are any students traveling now from Argentina?
In fact, some students started traveling, particularly to the US, because here in Argentina, we didn't have enough vaccines. So they had the plan of studying and getting vaccinated at the same time. But unfortunately, on June 21st, the government announced that there would be new restrictions on Argentinians traveling abroad. Basically, they wouldn't be able to come back. I mean, only 600 Argentinians would be able to enter the country per day. And this caused havoc, of course. So people, stopped traveling, fearing that they wouldn't be able to come back. That's what happened. Now they are traveling, but it's difficult because sometimes you book a flight and overnight it is canceled or rescheduled. So you don't really know if you'll be able to travel or not.
Very difficult.
Very difficult, yes.
Lots of uncertainty there. Okay, next up, the UK's new graduate route of post-study work rights has officially opened for applications, allowing stays of 2 years for undergraduate students and 3 years for PhD students.
And the graduate route is unsponsored, meaning that students can change jobs flexibly and that there are no minimum salary requirements. And the Home Office has also confirmed an extension of COVID-19 concessions around online study.
So back to you again, Gabby. How important are post-study work rights for Argentinian students coming to the UK in general?
Very important, not only to the UK, but all over the world, because students look forward to being able to work once they graduate. They see in studying abroad an opportunity to broaden their horizon, experience new kinds of lifestyles, incorporate social skills and also personal skills for their profile. So this didn't happen before. After the 2001 huge crisis that we had, students were not looking forward to emigrating, but now with the current social, economic and political crisis, people are willing to emigrate, and not only young students but also families. So this would be a good opportunity for us to promote programs, graduate programs, postgraduate, etc.
Very good. And Diego, Canada's international education sector was growing year on year prior to COVID. How much of a factor was the postgraduate work permits in that growth? And how did some of the broad features, I don't know if you've seen the UK's offer, but how do some of the features of that compare to what Canada is offering for post-study work rights?
Yeah, well, actually, the postgraduate work permit had a huge role to play here in Canada. So we were very excited to see the government being so flexible. And by the way, Gabby, Argentine students can come here to Canada. They don't have to go to the UK. But obviously, what happened was that the government was so flexible that some students were able to have a full online experience from their home country and still be eligible to apply to a postgraduate work permit coming to Canada after they finish the study. So this was unique. We had never seen or expected this before. Obviously, that is not in place anymore, but still, there's a lot of flexibility. And indeed, the fact that the students can finish their program, stay here for 1, 2, or 3 years. 3 years is the maximum amount of time for that open work permit, while they have the experience, the Canadian experience, which can then later be used for permanent residency. So that was amazing. We were very happy to do that. And even in the case of students going to the French-speaking post-secondary institutions, I may even say that it's easier to immigrate if you're studying in French in Canada. It's less expensive. Sometimes an international student will pay the same tuition fees as a Canadian national if they're studying at a university in French, for instance. So there's a lot, especially outside of Quebec. So there's a lot of possibility for students coming here, and definitely the workplace helps. And we need people to work in Canada. So I think that the UK was very smart with that program, because it resembles a little bit what Canada has been doing, allows students to have a little bit more time to acquire those work experience skills. Obviously, we know that some other European countries are even introducing some sort of a postgraduate work permit as well. I've seen this in France and in Belgium, but sometimes students don't have enough time. In Canada, they have plenty of time, sometimes 3 years to have enough work experience to apply and stay here permanently. So we were very thankful to see that. And obviously, we want more students coming.
So that link to possible sort of permanent residencies is perhaps a point of difference with what the UK has just introduced, which I'm not aware that there's that kind of link as yet. Okay, thank you. So let's take another story. And next up, a series of surveys by M2 Media have shown the impact of COVID-19 on agency revenue and working practices. And the most recent survey, completed by 775 agents worldwide, found that 65% were providing a mixture of online and face-to-face services, with the remainder working online only.
43.9% of agents said recruiting students online had been somewhat successful, while 18.8% said it had been highly successful. Poor internet connectivity, inadequate online marketing materials from partners, and difficulties in providing test support were some of the major issues that agents cited.
StudyTravel magazine's 2020 Global Agency Survey of agencies from 52 countries showed that whilst language and work travel business dipped, tertiary and high school courses were the business mainstays last year. And the big change in B2B conferencing behavior was that 69% of agencies took part in an online conference last year.
Gabby, how useful have online conferences been for you and the agents in your association over the last 17 months?
Very useful. Of course, we all miss events. We want to travel. We want to see you. We want the parties. We want to see our partners face to face. But I mean, it is true that I mean, online events are much easier to attend. I mean, they are convenient, time saving, and I mean, they are free of charge for agents as well. So almost all agencies in our association attend events. And but as I said before, we're looking forward to getting back on track and start traveling.
We all are. We all are.
Yes.
But with non-face-to-face student recruitment, Gabby, I would have thought that a fair amount of this was already being done online or over Skype, for example, before COVID-19. So that figure of 65% from M2 Media's report for mixed face-to-face and online services, it probably isn't that much of a change, is it?
It is a change, and I think there is a tendency, and things will not go back to what they were before. I mean, I can see it with my own clients. In the past, you talked over the phone and you had maybe a Zoom meeting, but they wanted to see you. I mean, particularly families with young kids, they wanted to see who you are, where you have the offices, and now that has changed. And I think it won't come back to what it was like before, particularly with clients that live far away from where you are.
Mm-hmm. And Diego, the faces of Languages Canada members are well known by agencies due to the many face-to-face conferences that they attend. So have relationships between agents and member schools continued through this sort of online contact?
They have. We know that our members have attended a lot of events, for instance, the Alfitos that you guys have promoted. For instance, Languages Canada has always been promoting those opportunities for members. So it was always good for them to be in touch with the agencies, and they all had to pivot and be in contact with the agencies, right? Because obviously it wasn't possible for them to travel. We feel like those events were useful, they're important, they still are and will continue to be. But I have to agree with Gabby that both agencies and schools want to be back on the road. They want to travel and meet again in person, especially when you're starting a relationship, signing new agreements. It's very important to have that confidence of a face-to-face interaction. And also the events provide some informal opportunities for them to network, build trust, and so on. So obviously, we know they'll be using online methods to keep and strengthen the relationships, but I think we will be back on the road pretty soon. One thing that I have noticed is that there was a lot of training, a lot of capacity building, which is amazing, especially when we're talking about post-secondary studies. Sometimes it might be a little difficult for the staff in a specific agency to know, you know, they're sometimes working, I don't know, with 5-10 countries. So how do you know about the post-secondary reality in each of those countries? So I know there was a lot of training taking place, and agencies are getting ready, obviously, to feel more confident and sell those long-term programs, if you will. So, so yeah, that it's interesting, and we'll see the upcoming months what happens and when we'll definitely be back on the road and see each other again.
Okay, great. Let's have a look at another story from the last few days. And we're going back to Australia again, actually, where the federal government has announced a new 4-stage roadmap out of COVID-19 restrictions based on as yet unspecified vaccination targets being met.
Unfortunately, in the current phase 1, which is called Vaccinate, Prepare and Pilot, inbound commercial passenger arrivals have been halved to just 3,000 per week in an attempt to contain the Delta variant. But the government will nonetheless expand trials of student visa programs.
In the second stage, which Prime Minister Scott Morrison hopes will begin early next year, capped student visa entry will be introduced and then expanded through the subsequent stages until there are no limits in phase 4. So Diego, again, we're starting to see some differentiated rules from Australia for vaccinated passengers outlined in the plans there. And Canada, as you know, has just lifted quarantine requirements for students who are fully vaccinated. Has there been an impact in terms of inquiries and enrolments for Languages Canada members as a result of that?
Yes, there has been, Matt. In fact, it's interesting because obviously Canada has a geographic situation which is completely different of that of Australia. So it's understandable that the measures are also different. And so in fact, we all know Canada has always been open to international students. And when I say international students, I'm talking about study permit holders, not students coming on a tourist visa or electronic authorization. So Canada has been open, and we have welcomed hundreds of thousands of students already between March last year and now in July 2021. And we actually expect a few 100,000 more to arrive in the coming months for the September intake. And so, but you are right, Matt, in the sense that some people were a little bit more hesitant. They were on the wall. And so now they're saying, oh, okay, maybe if I'm fully vaccinated, I'll be skipping quarantine. So students who were waiting, they're now starting to book, which is amazing. We're ready to welcome those students. But those who were a little braver, if I may put it this way, they've come here already, or they're simply waiting for their study permit to be issued. And once they have their in their hands, they'll be flying here. And if they're fully vaccinated and meet all the criteria, there's a lot of criteria, I have to say, they'll be able to skip quarantine, and that's amazing. So we don't have a roadmap yet as Australia, the UK, that's coming. And so we're expecting to hear something from the federal government pretty soon, but we're excited, and obviously we're waiting to get more bookings.
And Gabby, Colombia and Brazil have become important markets for Australian educators. You know, are there any signs that this could happen in Argentina too?
Yes, we are getting there as well. We are working hard towards it. So, I mean, once their borders open, we'll start promoting Australia as a destination as well. Definitely. When the pandemic broke out, we started, at least in my agency, I started offering webinars, destination webinars. But as soon as we did Australia, then we started getting inquiries, and we found out that we could not do anything because the country was closed. With New Zealand happened exactly the same thing. So we decided to postpone the promotion of Australia and New Zealand, and continued with Canada instead.
Okay, thank you. Let's take another story then. So in the UK, a group of 36 backbench government MPs have sent a letter to the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, urging him to provide more support for the struggling ELT sector.
And the MPs are calling for funds to be set aside to provide business rate relief from 2020 to 2022, which they say would only cost the government around £17 million, but will help schools to survive until students can return and protect jobs and expertise in the sector.
So Diego, how much support have schools in Canada received, either at sort of federal or provincial level? And are there any concerns of sort of further closures or job losses in the sector?
Yeah, so in the case of Canada, the government was also very generous. I would say it was very similar to what happened in the UK and a few other European markets. The government was providing up to 75% of wage and rent subsidies. Again, a lot of different criteria to be met, but overall, this has kept the sector alive, even though schools have pivoted and offered online courses and other kinds of offerings. But those benefits are set to expire this September. So this is very critical. We've been advocating a lot for those benefits to be extended until the end of the year, or they simply let in students. So either our members are able to work, or they get the necessary help to keep surviving until they can work, right? So the government should not be taking away the help altogether, because then they can live on nothing. So we were very fortunate. We didn't have that many closures. Languages Canada still has over 200 members, even though obviously the situation is very dire. But we're excited to see that the travel restrictions are being eliminated, even though we would like to see them being eliminated a little bit faster. And so schools are welcoming students again, and it's important to note that the vast majority of members can operate or will be reopening or are open already to deliver in-person classes or hybrid classes. So the fact that we're able to already offer classes online, in person, that's amazing. And we know that students are coming here for that. So stay tuned. If we have more news on the Canadian government, we'll be sure to share that with the network.
And Gabby, I know you travel to the UK often with your groups. Are you worried that some of the teachers and staff that you have met over the years will have moved on, or that some talent and expertise will be lost from the sector in the UK?
Really worried. I mean, I've been concerned about this for the past 18 months, and I am in contact with lots of teachers and staff from different schools I work with. And I'm really hopeful that this will soon finish so that we can all get back to business. I know that some staff has been forced to move out, but maybe they will come back. Honestly, I thought that July 2021 would be an opportunity for us to go back to the UK, but we are on the red list, so there is nothing we can do. We just have to wait.
Hopefully soon. Okay, so we've also got a few comments from Brett about the government support in Australia. So we're just going to play another brief video.
We have had some additional support from the federal government, which was a program announced in our latest federal budget, and something that English Australia had lobbied for consecutively in the months leading up to the budget. And that's some funding for the Innovation Fund, or Innovation Funding Grants, which can provide up to $150,000 for private ELICOS providers or private higher education providers to look at how they can adapt their business models and try and develop more online offshore programs. And within that program itself, we're certainly very hopeful that it will enable colleges to retain some staff that can work on these projects, and to be able to build new business models, and hopefully that will sustain some of the colleges.
So that's a government project aimed specifically at EA type colleges teaching ELICOS.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a good result. That's a good result. So well done. I gather you would have had a fair bit to do in achieving that result there, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. We are absolutely very proud of the outcome. In the budget itself, so it was a $9 million budget allocation towards the sector. We obviously think that the sector needs more, and we'd love to see more being split between all of our different college types. But working with many of the private providers whose livelihoods and businesses really will be supported by this program over the coming months, then we are very, very proud of the achievement as English Australia.
Okay, let's take one more story to discuss, and this time it's from Japan, where an agency and some language schools have joined forces to create a website that will gather stories from students about how being locked out of Japan during COVID-19 has affected them.
That's right. The website was created by Gogo Nihon Agency and Kai Japanese Language School, and they are encouraging agents worldwide to get their affected students to add a story to the site, and these will be sent to the Japanese government as a lobbying tool.
Yeah, there really are some very moving and heartbreaking comments on the site. One student from Poland said, it's very tough as the situation affects me mentally, but waiting is not as difficult when you know how long you have to wait. Being left in the dark with no real hope makes me feel demotivated and unwanted by the country I love the most. This is a really difficult situation. And how do you keep clients engaged and motivated during that kind of uncertainty? I mean, Gabby, if you want to take that, how do you keep clients motivated in that kind of circumstance?
Constant communication. You call them, you send them a message, you keep communicated, you organize webinars. If it's a group, for example, it's important to keep them together and to have the spirit of the trip alive at all times. I mean, there is uncertainty, but we know that in the end, we'll be able to do it. So the idea has to be fixed in their minds, and that keeps them motivated.
Okay, thank you. Let's quickly run through a few more headlines from the last few days before we take any questions from the audience.
And first up is some news from us. The 2020-2021 StudyTravel Star Awards will be held this year as a free online event. See the Star Awards page on our website for registration details, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely. Cardiff Sixth Form College in the UK, part of the Duke's Education Group, has announced plans to expand with a new A-level campus in Cambridge.
The International Education Association of Australia and Education New Zealand have released joint research that shows domestic students became more aware of issues faced by international students during the pandemic, and that many provided forms of assistance to them.
Italian language provider Scuola Leonardo da Vinci has opened 2 new centres in Turin and Viareggio.
And a couple of charitable endeavours to mention now. UK language courses, or UKLC, are doing a charity walk and cycle around all of their summer centres that would normally be operational to raise awareness of the plight of UK ELT and contributions for English UK's Eddie Byers Fund. Meanwhile, agency Go Study Australia is providing free meals for students in Victoria.
Okay, now it might just be possible that that we've got UKLC on the call.
Hi, Matt.
Hello, Tregarin. How are you?
Very good.
Here we
thank
are.
you.
We're live on the walk. Where are you? Yeah.
I am somewhere between Manchester and Liverpool, cycling along an old railway line.
Wow.
It's day 2 of our 500 miles to save UK ELT events that we're doing. We're doing it to highlight the difficult position that language schools in the UK are in at the moment, surviving. And we started in York yesterday. We're travelling across 10 of our summer centres and finishing in London and at Parliament Square next Monday on the 19th.
And you're raising money for the Eddie Byers Fund, is that right?
Raising money for the Eddie Byers Fund, aiming for about £3,000. We're nearly there at the moment, which is great. What's been really amazing is we've asked schools and we've asked friends at other language schools and English UK and the venues that we've worked with normally, universities and boarding schools, to get involved, and they've been absolutely brilliant. They think it's a great way to highlight, a positive way to highlight what's going on in the UK at the moment, and they're raising sponsorship money. Many of them are doing legs. I was joined yesterday by 2 schools in York and Hull. I've been to Communicate School today in Manchester. I think Peter Hayes from IH Manchester is joining us in the next few days for a leg. So lots of schools getting involved and trying to draw some attention ahead of English UK's event in Parliament Square a week on Monday.
Okay, fantastic. Best of luck to you. I'll point out that there's a news story on our website and in this week's newsletter where there's links to your fundraising page and so on. So how much have you got left today?
I did 80 miles yesterday over the Pennines, and today I've only got a 40-mile leg to do, but I'm in absolute agony. Oh. So I've got 20 miles and hope to finish by about 7 o'clock this evening.
Okay, good luck to you.
Keep going.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Right.
And thank you to the presenters. It was really interesting to listen to the presentations, Gabriela and Diego and so on, while I've been cycling. So thanks, everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Good luck. Okay, so that brings us up to date with all of the news stories and goings on in the industry. And at this point, we'll open up to the audience to see if there are any questions for our guests or for the StudyTravel team. These can be on any of the stories or the topics that we have discussed today. So do please make sure that your organization and your name are in your Zoom name or in the question. Let's just open up the chat to see if we've got anything in there.
We've got one from Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl, from English USA. She said it's just more of a general question. But what are the agencies, or what are agencies' reactions to the OWL aggregator craze?
So that's one for Gabby, maybe.
One for Gabby.
Yeah. So this is more in the higher education space, isn't it? The things, it's sort of aggregator sites. Are you familiar with these, Gabby?
No, not really.
Is it, Diego, is it something that you've seen much in Canada?
Yeah, so traditionally, I would say our industry is a bit old school in many senses, and we see that a lot of tech companies are entering the space. I still think there is a lot to be done. There are some challenges, but also it remains to be seen. I think that the beauty of this industry is that we have occasions such as this one and the Alfie events and so on to get together, meet one another, and know who we're talking to, and not having our students simply communicate through an algorithm or a platform or website. So education is, yes, a service, there's a price to it, but there's also a very important human element to it. And it's important we keep that. But that being said, Sharon, we can never fight technology. And so I guess we have to adapt, but still, yeah, I'd say it's a bit soon to say what's going to happen. Just we should, yeah, try and adapt, be smart, because technology is coming to our sector.
But is it, Gabby, is it an important element to say that you know the fact that you have personally been to all of the schools that you promote, and you know those schools, you know those areas, is that a key element for the way that you work as an agency?
It is extremely important. I mean, the human factor, yes. I mean, there is nothing that can replace that. So sometimes you get those students who have been surfing the net for months and they still cannot decide which institution to choose. And that's because they cannot get a human being telling them, I mean, about the experience, someone who has been there, who knows the place and who knows which opportunities they will have. I think that in a sense, the pandemic has shown us how important, I mean, the human factor is. So I don't think our industry is threatened by that. Not at all.
Okay, very good. We'll get
human factor, yes.
We've got a question there from Gabriela. I've seen an increase in interest from Argentines to study in Canada. Do you think this will increase? That this increase will flatten with the end of the pandemic and the new postgraduate work options in the UK? So do you think?
No, I don't think it will flatten. On the contrary, and this is related to what Diego said before, and also you, Matt, said before. There is this question of emigrating, which will not be present in the UK. And due to the crisis we're undergoing here, I mean, people are really interested in seeking opportunities abroad. I mean, Canada has grown enormously from the beginning of the pandemic, and we get more and more inquiries every day. And it's not only my agency, but everyone in our association shows the same signs. So there is interest in Canada, and that won't change.
Okay, good signs for Canada.
Yes, in spite of the climatic conditions.
We'll take the students, Gabby. Send them our way.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more. Oh, there is a last. There is one. Recently, Iranian rates of refusals for visa refusals is a lot. Would anyone like to comment on that? Have you had any experience of that in Canada, Diego or Gabriela? Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, we're also having some visa refusals, which makes us a bit sad because you know how hard it is to recruit students and to be able to turn a lead into a prospective and real student. And sometimes you go through the process, I mean, all the college application, visa application, students sometimes even pay full fees and then they get their visa refused. So I've been having talks with the consulate here in Buenos Aires to see if we can do something to change this. Because sometimes the visa refusals are granted on no clear grounds. Sometimes students of different backgrounds get the same type of letter saying the same thing. I mean, the reasons for refusal are exactly the same. And I mean, an 18-year-old student is not the same as a 50-year-old student, but they somehow get the same letter. So that is a bit worrying, really. And we hope the tendency changes, or we hope that we can do something together. I guess in Colombia, something of the kind is happening as well. So, because I have chats with association directors in Colombia and in Brazil, you know, we have a group called LATAMA, and all Latin American associations gather frequently in order to discuss problems. And I can see that is a tendency. So it will be interesting to see if we can change it.
Yeah, I understand the point by Gabby, and also the question coming, for instance, in the case of Iran. I know that in the case of Canada, obviously the Canadian government had to completely shift how they were dealing with study permits. And so they were maximizing the network. So it might be that, for instance, a student from Argentina, their application went to the IRCC office in Dubai or in the Philippines. So they were maximizing the staff. And therefore, sometimes what happened was a study permit from an Argentine student used to be treated in Buenos Aires, but now it's being treated in Dubai. And then so there may be a misunderstanding of some cultural aspects of an application. And so, but they're slowly adapting. And so what we've been telling students and agencies is also to have a very, very complete profile. They cannot assume that the visa officer will know something about their country. And there's no interview like in the US when you're applying for US visa, there's a face-to-face interview. So in the case of Canada, just try and be as clear as possible, and the chances of having the visa approval rate going up, they're much higher. We're monitoring that, and we will, that's a good point, and we'd be happy to organize something in the future to talk about how to apply for a study permit, what are the tendencies and so on. But rest assured, students are welcome. And so they really are, if they meet the correct criteria, they will always get a response. And if there are reasons to believe they should get a visa, apply again. They can always reconsider, and you can get access to information. This is a public service by the Canadian government, so anyone can ask for the specific reasons why a study permit was denied, and they have to provide you with information. It takes a little time, but it's possible. But I'm happy to talk about this at another occasion and help with our dear partner agencies.
Thank you, Diego.
Okay, Hanks, over to you.
Okay. Well, I don't think we've got any other questions. So it looks like that's the end of the audience Q&A, which brings us to the end of this week's StudyTravel TV Live. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to come along to the next one, visit the StudyTravel TV Live page on the StudyTravel Network, which you can find under the StudyTravel magazine section in the menu. We'll be announcing the guest speakers for the next broadcast on this page, and you can also find the recording of this episode and past episodes in the listing at the bottom.
Finally, we'd like to say a big thank you to our special guests today, Diego and Gabby, and Brett as well. Of course, he's not on the call, but a shout out to Brett for the video interview. And thank you again to our sponsor, Londonist. We'll be hosting these broadcasts every fortnight on a Friday. So the next one will be on the 23rd of July at the same time, 4 p.m. BST. And we hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nicola, Matthew, and Diego. I miss you all.
Hope to see you soon. Thanks.
See you soon, hopefully.
Bye.